Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu salam ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's On Disciplining the Soul, Kitab Riyadat al-Nafs, translated by Timothy Winter, Abdul Hakim Murad. We are still reading from the chapter on the means by which good character may be acquired. بيان استبلد به ينال حسن الخلق على الجملة. And we are on page 33, mid-page of the this is number 30, page 33 of the translation. The previous session concluded with the notion that to live a long life and you dedicate this long life to the worship, service, obedience, getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because this life is the where you plant and the hereafter is where basically you reap, you harvest your deeds. So the more you'd like to sow seeds of good deeds, of course, in this life, and the more worship is the more reward, of course. Then, but of course, remember that one has to do things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One's ego should have no share. And the longer the life in this fashion, then the nafs would be purer, and the one's traits, morals, ethics would be stronger and will be rooted in oneself. And the aim of these forms of worship is really to have an impact on the heart. And one would know this if one really loves these forms of worship that bring him close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we continue. وغاية هذه الأخلاق أن ينقطع عن نفس حب الدنيا ويرسخ فيها حب الله تعالى، فلا يكون شيء أحب إليه من لقاء الله تعالى عز وجل. The purpose of such traits of character is to cut the love of this world away from the soul and to set firmly therein the love of God, exalted is He, so that one would love nothing so much as the meeting with Him. Such a man will then employ his wealth only in ways which will bring the servant, the slave of God, the worshipper, closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise with his anger, the human being's anger and desire, since these will be under his command and weighed up in the scales of the intellect and the law, so that he is contented and happy with them. It is wrong to deem it unlike that one's delight might be in prayer and that one's worship might become delectable. For everyday life draws even more wondrous things from the soul. We see kings and the voluptuous rich in constant misery, and the bankrupt gambler to overcome with delight and joy during his gambling, that one might well discount the possibility of man's gaining any pleasure without this practice, even after it had taken away his wealth, ruined his home, and left him quite penniless, for he will still love and enjoy it by reason of his soul's longing familiarity with it. Before moving to the next example, what he means here about these kings and wealthy, they are in constant sadness. That's if they are really Um, the most important thing is the meaning of this life and where one fits into this picture. For wealth in itself, while it definitely would facilitate comfort, it does not provide meaning. I think this is really the most important thing. When a woman in the United States, a wealthy woman who owned a bag factory for famous factory that sells bags. She has properties, a socialite, etc., etc. She had only one daughter, and one day she wrote a note to her daughter, simply saying sorry. She apologized to her, and she committed suicide. There's no meaning. You can accumulate wealth, and there's no problem with the with wealth in itself if you put it into good use. Sayyidina Uthman bin Affan, he was wealthy, and he put his wealth into good use. Sayyidina Abdurrahman bin Auf, he was wealthy. So the idea is wealth in itself uh, is not the problem. Do you gain it from halal ways? Do you spend it in halal ways? Do you give charity, the regular zakah and else, and other forms of charity? One is obligatory and the rest voluntary. Your responsibility does not stop with your obligatory zakah. So this is the problem that we are highlighting here. Now, regarding the gambler, today we know that gambling, it's not really making money. These gambling casinos, their games, their machines, they are designed in a way that you would lose money. Okay, but we know from the field of psychology today that gambling in itself, like the gambler, while he is gambling, while he is like at least expecting, he thinks uh, that he will still win. He loses, but then gambles again, and he thinks that he will still win, and again and again and again. While he is gambling, he will have high dopamine. It's addiction. Gambling is addiction because it functions in the same way like other forms of addiction. The next example, similarly with the man whose hobby is pigeons, who may stand all day in the hot sun without feeling any pain due to the pleasure he takes in his birds and their movements, flight and soaring around in the sky. Here spoke basically it talks about the a man. We had a right now. This neighbor is an adult. When he was a kid, he would spend quite some time on the roof of their house uh, with the pigeons. They fly, they come back, and he was definitely fascinated and he loved what he was doing. And practically it was every day. But he obviously outgrew this hobby. Third example, and there's the sly criminal who boasts of the blows and stabs he receives, and of his steadfastness under the whip, and who goes up to the cross or the gibbet bragging about his endurance of these punishments, considering this to be a source of pride. He may be torn limb from limb an attempt to make him confess to his crime or to that committed by another man with his knowledge, and persevere in his denial and pay no heed to the punishments because of his joy at what he considers to be his courage and virility. Despite the torment provided by his circumstances, he is delighted by them and finds them a source of pride. The next, the description here, almost what we call, I think they call them drag queen today. Uh, they drag queens. They usually, I mean, um, they wear like females. They put makeup. Uh, Imam Ghazali here says, and there is no condition more ugly and despicable than that of an effeminate man, mukhannath, who imitates woman by plucking out his hair, tattooing his face, and keeping their company, the company of woman, so that you see him rejoicing in his state and boasting of the perfection of his effeminacy to other such men. Even the cuppers and sweepers can be seen boasting to one another just as much as the kings and scholars. All of this is the result of habit and persisting in one course for a long period and seeing the same thing in one's acquaintances. The problem sometimes is basically the obviously the context, the parents. I'm talking now about the not the cuppers and the sweepers. Talking about the drag queens or the effeminate or the. I'm not talking about anything biological. I'm talking about simply the how parents nowadays. There is. I know a gynecologist in the United States. After a woman gave birth to a baby boy, she did not want to register him as male, and she said that she wants the baby to choose the gender later on in life. The problem is that legally he has to write down the sex of the born baby, and you can see this is really this is the parents, it is the society. Since the soul commonly takes pleasure even in vain things and inclines toward ugliness, how could it not take pleasure in the truth, were it to be restored to it for a while and made to persevere therein? The soul's inclination to these disgusting things is unnatural, and resembles an inclination to the eating of mud. Uh, the eating of mud, the it's a kind of an eating disorder that sometimes children, at least children, some children would do this. Uh, and so, Pika, that's one word that is used to describe this as an eating disorder. The second word is geophagy. Geophagy. Uh, um, it's really eating clay, dirt, mud, and some experts, physicians, they say that this is the lack. Maybe dietitians, they said it's a lack of zinc in the body. Might drive kids to. It could be also simply exploration, but it does exist. Yet even this may gain control over some people and become a habit. the eating of mud. As for the inclination to wisdom and the love, knowledge, and worship of God, this resembles the inclination towards food and drink. It is the expression of the heart's nature and is divine command and is a divine command, while an inclination to the demands of one's desires is in itself something strange and is not part of its nature. The heart's food is wisdom. Remember, قوت القلوب. When we say food for the hearts, that's exactly uh, what is meant here. The heart's food is wisdom, knowledge, and the love of God exalts He, and it only diverges from the demands of its nature when afflicted by some disease, just as the stomach may be afflicted by an illness which prevents it from desiring the food, and drink, which give it life. Thus, every man's heart, which inclines to anything but the love of God, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is afflicted by a disease in proportion to this inclination. Unless the love, unless he loveth, unless he loveth a thing, because it helps him to love God, shouldn't be unless he loves, and to practice his religion, which is not the symptom of an illness. From the foregoing, you have to come to know beyond all doubt that good traits of character may be acquired through self discipline by means of imitating at the outset the actions which result from such traits so that they may ultimately become part of one's nature. This is one of the wonders of the relationship between the heart and the members. The members, al-jawarih, the limbs, the but also they do include the the tongue, the eyes, the ears, the hands, the feet, and literally al-jawarih. The root of this word is jarh, which is really causing injury, slicing, uh, and it's not that the tongue physically injures. That's why in Arabic there's a proverb that says that the tongue is a weapon that has is a sword that has two edges, meaning that one edge is pointing to other people and one edge is directed to oneself. So it does injure, and the injury of the tongue is worse than the injury caused if you are making salad and you cut your finger. That's jarah, jarahta nafsik. Uh, in the But the insult of the tongue, uh, while a physical injury could heal in a couple of days if it's really small, the psychological injury that the tongue could cause might never heal. Verbal abuse, etc. So these jawarih, Imam Ghazali says, by which I mean the soul and the body, because he spoke about the heart and the jawarih and these members, these limbs, these organs. By which I mean the soul and the body, the effect of every attribute which appears in the heart must emanate onto the members, so that they move only in conformity to it. Similarly, every act performed by the members has an effect which makes its way up to the heart, thereby constituting a form of circular movement. To understand this thing, a metaphor may be employed as follows: a man who wishes his soul to acquire the attribute of skillful calligraphy, so that he becomes a calligrapher by nature, like a second nature. And disposition must do with the member, which is the hand, those things which the calligrapher does. He and devote himself assiduously to this for a long period, during which he imitates the calligrapher by copying his fine script. He continues to persevere in this until it becomes a firmly rooted attribute in his soul. And at last, he comes to write naturally with a beautiful hand, whereas he had earlier done so only artificially. It was fine calligraphy itself which rendered his own calligraphy fine, as fares through a difficult simulation, the effect of which nevertheless rose to his heart, and then descended again from the heart to the member in question to enable him to write well naturally. The case of a man who wishes to become a sage of the soul is similar. He is obliged to do the things which such sages do, namely, a constant application to sagacity, until this attribute becomes attached to his heart and he becomes a sage of the soul. The next example begins with a man who wants to become generous. There's a long entry here, and we should not really interrupt it. We'll keep it to the next session, inshallah. Until then, سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.